Hale Media Group presents Go Blue Hoops, where Michigan basketball's past, present, and future all come together in one show. Hosted by former Wolverine great, 10-year NBA veteran, and longtime ESPN and NBC college basketball analyst Tim McCormick. Each episode goes beyond the box scores, from championship memories and recruiting stories to sharp breakdowns of the season ahead. Insight, legacy. Michigan basketball. This is Go Blue Hoops.
All right, welcome to the first Go Blue Hoops podcast. I'm elated to talk some Michigan basketball with you today. I hope you're fired up as well. If so, please tell your friends about us. I think this is going to be something that a lot of Michigan basketball fans will love. My name is Tim McCormick, and I love Michigan sports history. I played on the basketball team back in the early 80s. I played in the NBA for 10 years, Seattle, Philadelphia, New Jersey, Houston, Atlanta, and New York. After retiring, I started working for the NBA Players Association, a job that I absolutely loved, working with the 450 players in the NBA, working with rookies, working with high school players. And from that experience of working for the union and playing in the league and playing in Michigan, I've had a chance to interact and get to know and become friends with so many Michigan legends, and I would love to be able to share their story with you. And also now I am a college basketball analyst this year I'll be with NBC and Versant and Peacock. And so I'm pretty current on college basketball. I guess you could say that I am also a podcaster. So what's the goal of this? Pretty simple. Number one, it's to have some fun and deliver quality information I know you're going to like. I absolutely love the potential of this team and Dusty May's coaching, his recruiting. I want to provide commentary and analysis, and I'm going to break down the games for you. We'll preview matchups that are coming. Maybe we'll take some questions from you as we really get good at this digital thing. And then also we're going to talk about recruiting. And most important, I want to identify a Michigan legend every week and bring them to you, share their stories, and then have some fun as well. Also, since we're just starting out with this thing, I really want to market it well, and we would love to hear from you. Maybe you can like us or follow us or share. And the place where you can find us is at Hale, Hail Media Group, at Hale Media Group. And we have some flexibility to do whatever you want and go in any direction that you think is appropriate. If you have a favorite player, let me know. I bet that I can get them. All right. So let me be really clear about this. I expect Michigan basketball to be outstanding this year, considerably better than last year, if you can believe that. And when you think about it, they won 27 games. They won the Big Ten tournament last year. They put two big men in the NBA. Danny Wolf was all Big Ten and an NBA draft pick. Vlad Golden, same thing, all Big Ten, NBA draft pick. And I expect them to be way better this year. So be excited about it. And Michigan got off to a good start last night. They played against Oakland University. And I want to take a few minutes to break down the game, tell you what I thought. There are concerns for sure. It's not a flawless team. But I'm excited to break the Michigan-Oakland game down right now. The life of a college basketball coach is stressful, high anxiety, constantly worrying about the stuff going on within your program. For instance, how is Yaxel Lendeborg's wrist? It's bandaged up. Can he play? Kaysen is out with his shoulder. You've got a tough opponent in Oakland. I know it didn't look that way, but they're one of the best teams in the horizon. It's banner night. Do your players relax? Are they nervous because it's the opening night? Who's the backup point guard? Turnovers are a huge issue. As the CEO of a college basketball team, it's Dusty May's job to worry about all of those things, plus probably 25 other things. What color uniform are we going to wear? How are the coaches coordinating their sweatsuit? There's a lot going on. And I want you to know this. Last night, in one of the few times this year, Dusty May, I promise you this, went to bed and had a smile on his face. Think about all the things that they did last night that were exceptional. First of all, 69 points in the first half. That's the most ever by a Michigan basketball team in the first half. They made over half of their threes. They started fast and never slowed down. 10 guys scored, dominant rebounds, only 8 turnovers in a high-tempo game. And remember, that's probably the biggest issue of this team, is how is their ball security. 2 players last night in the domination of Oakland really stood out to me the most. Merez Johnson, transfer from Illinois. If you didn't watch, you're going to love this guy. 10 for 12 from the field. He had 24 points. He plays like a young Jalen Duren, Andre Drummond back when he was starting out, Montrezl Harrell. Like, think about super athletic big guys that run the court, grab every rebound like they're hogging the rebound from other people. They were incredible. So is Merez Johnson. Also, my takeaway from the first 2 exhibition games, which were against Cincinnati and St. John's, big physical athletic teams that are deep, was that Michigan really struggled with their guards off the bench, particularly Trey McKinney. He looked tight. He was nervous. Not last night. His shooting was locked in. 6 out of 8 from the three-point line. He had 21 points. His passing really caught me off guard. A lot of no-look passes, and he was just poised, exceptional, and had a huge breakout. First game of his career. I mean, he's averaging 21 points per game. That's as good as anybody in the Big Ten. Also, Adai Mara transferred from UCLA, and he's special. Second tallest Michigan basketball player ever at 7'3". He actually is taller than my freshman roommate at Michigan, John Antonitis, who is 7'2". But Mara is a world-class lob threat. Such an easy target. He's got good hands. He had a double-double last night against Oakland, and that doesn't even talk about his 5 blocks and all the shots that he did change. To let you know how good it was for Dusty May last night, how happy he was and how he had a big smile on his face when he went to bed, his son, Charlie May, scored his first ever college points, nailed down a 3. Yes, this was definitely a nice night for Dusty May and the Michigan Wolverines. What else? I mentioned during the podcast that I was going to preview the Big Ten this year, and it's really a short preview at this point. Michigan and Purdue are the Big Ten favorites. The key is who builds chemistry, who stays healthy, and who has the best point guard. And right now, you would have to give the tip of the hat to Purdue because Braden Smith, player of the year last year, favored to be player of the year in the Big Ten this season. But Michigan's got somebody to keep an eye on. And I think that Elliot Cadeau is such a dynamic playmaker, a big producer, especially moving the ball and passing it. I don't know who the backup point guard is for Michigan this year. It might be LJ Kaysen, but I love the way that Cadeau is able to push the ball in tempo. He's a great lob threat passer, And then also he understands who's hot and who's open. Think about the way Xavier Simpson, how about Eli Brooks, Abdul Rahman, guys like that ran Michigan's team, and those are some of the best and most explosive offenses we've seen. I think Cadeau's can do the same thing. When the offense clicks, keep an eye on Elliot Cadeau. Also, 12 assists last night in his debut. He didn't score much, and it really shows you they have so many weapons that they don't necessarily need him. Think about this. Michigan scored 121 in a 40-point game against Oakland. The Pistons last night scored 114 in a game 8 minutes longer. College 40 minutes, NBA 48. Super impressive by Michigan's offense and Elliot Cadeau. Also, 3 injuries to keep an eye on as we start the season. Yaxel Lendeborg had a heavily taped right hand, didn't start. He will during the key games as we move forward. He came off the bench, still made both of his threes, scored 12 points with basically a boxing glove on his hand. I have no idea how you shoot with something like that wrapped on your hand. But he was good in his debut. LJ Kaysen, his shoulder looked like it was bothering him. He did not play. That makes sense to me. There's no need for him right now. Get healthy. Also, Winters Grady, the freshman sharpshooter, had a boot on his foot. He's probably out for a little while. Another key that I was watching that I want you to keep an eye on as well. Michigan's going to be a good defensive team. Can they be a great defensive team? Big part of the equation. Will Michigan big guys be able to move on the perimeter, double team, hard hedge, drop cover against the other teams that run high screen and roll? I thought that Mara and Johnson moved really well. Lendeborg is an all-league defender in the Sun Belt last year. We already knew he was good. And then Will Cheddar, who last year played backup center behind Vlad Golden. They said, we've got the center position covered. We need you to lose weight, be more mobile and agile on the perimeter. Will Cheddar's playing the 3 now. He had 16 points. He's moving very, very well. And then the other 2 guys that I'm a big fan of, and I think they're poised to have great years. Talking Roddy Gale and Amari Burnett. Why do I like them so much? Because of the fact that they are now surrounded by elite shooters, playmakers, big guys that can play in the post. Those 2 are going to get a lot of wide open shots. And as the season goes on, I think both of them will average 12 points per game. Yesterday, they combined for 25. Good start for both of them. I could break this down more, but it was such a massive mismatch that the game was a little bit boring to me. There was not any resistance from Oakland, so there's no need to really break things down any further. I am so proud, excited to introduce an absolute legend and a hero to me. His name is Cazzie Russell, and I've got to be honest, I never saw him play. He played in the early 60s. I was just a youngster, but my dad always raved about him, and his jersey is up in the rafters. But there was a more significant story I want to share. In 1989, I was a member of the Houston Rockets, and I loved where I was at, playing with Olajuwon, and I mean, so many really good players. They won an NBA title 2 years later, so the nucleus was there. All of a sudden, out of the clear blue, I got traded from Houston to Atlanta. And the word that always comes to mind when you get traded, chaos. It's horrible. 1 minute life is good, you're relaxing, you're coming back from practice. The next minute you're on another team, and the next night you're going to be playing in a different city, different uniform, different playbook. You have to have the utilities turned off, cancel your apartment, cancel your cable, throw your food away, and then jump on the first plane that you possibly can to get to your next destination. So I remember showing up at training camp the very next day in Atlanta, And I was looking through the program and I noticed, wow, pretty good team. You've got Dominique Wilkins and Moses Malone. I don't want to meet them. Doc Rivers, John Battle, Sidney Moncrief. I don't want to meet them. I saw that a special assistant for the team was a guy named Cazzie Russell. And I couldn't wait to get over to meet him. And he was so gracious. He knew who I was, which impressed me. I was really proud of that. And Cazzie and I became friends. We had a great conversation. I asked him about the history of the game, and so we hit it off, and he really made me feel connected. Ramil Robinson, Michigan's great point guard for the national championship team, was on that team as well. And Cazzie Russell put his arms around both of us and embraced us. And the reason that's so important is, for me, the special care he gave to Michigan men taught me a lesson, because when I retired and started working for the NBA Players Association, my job was to connect with players. And I always remember what Cazzie did. So any Michigan player that came into the NBA, I embraced them and supported them and encouraged them. I was in charge of the rookie transition program. So every year, the 60 players that get drafted that come into the NBA, my job is to onboard them and to mentor them and role model them. And I remember Chris Webber and Jalen Rose and Nick Stauskas and Jordan Poole and Loy Vaught and Mo Taylor and on and on and on and on. I would make sure I had a meal with them and talk to them about all the resources that were available. Basically, what I did is I followed the lead of Cazzie Russell. He's a hero. He's a legend. His stories are so creative and so amazing. I know that you are going to love getting to meet the great, great Cazzie Russell. All right, everybody. I like evaluating basketball games, but what gets me most excited is talking to my heroes, and we have one today. Cazzie Russell put Michigan basketball on the map in the 1960s. He was a 3-time All-American. Why? Well, because freshmen weren't allowed to play back then. So he was 3 for 3 as a sophomore, junior, and senior. He also was in the national championship game in 1965. Michigan lost a tight game to UCLA. And then, most important, number 33 is up in the rafters. Is that all? Absolutely not. He was the number 1 pick in the NBA draft, a champion with the New York Knicks, and for over 3 decades, a high school, college, and pro coach. The icon, the legend, the great Cazzie Russell, thank you very much for joining me. How's your life?
My life is good. I'm spending my time coaching at Flagler College, coaching women. A good friend of mine talked me into taking the position just to help. He told me that women listen better than men. And I told him, I'm not commenting on that. I'm gonna leave that alone. But I'm enjoying myself. I'm also in the ministry. I was called to the ministry in '87. So I preach and teach, and then occasionally I play a little golf. So I'm trying to stay busy because I understand that an idle mind is the devil's workshop. So I don't want that to happen.
I like the maize shirt you're wearing, and I'm dying to know what is your handicap, Cazzie?
Well, now that I'm 81, I would imagine Tim is probably maybe 11 or 12. Right around in there. I would say if I got a chance to play a little bit more, maybe a 10. Toughest game I've ever played, though. It really is. It really is a tough game.
Have you ever been close to shooting your age?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when I retired from the NBA, my handicap was 2.
Ooh.
And I had the pleasure of shooting 64 in a big outing, and I couldn't talk. I mean, I was hitting the ball, and then whenever guys would say anything to me, I would just kind of nod my head for fear that I would lose what I was doing. So, but
You were like a pitcher in baseball that had a no-hitter. Everybody was
yes,
afraid to
exactly.
Have you ever had a hole-in-one?
I have. I've had one playing with a gentleman at Crosswinds Country Club, and I hit the 9-iron in there, about 125, 30 yards, and it took 2 bounces, and it was like a little knoll that it went over, so I didn't actually. I knew I'd hit it good, Tim, and I knew it was headed for the stick, but there was another shot there about 5 to 6 feet, so I thought that might be mine, and the guy says, "No." And he walked up there and said, "No, that's not your ball. We don't know where." So he kept walking. The guy says, "It's in the hole." And so,
That's an awesome story.
um,
So Cazzie, let's go back in time to the start of your Michigan career. You're a high
mhm.
school All-American. How was the recruiting process? Was it a lock for you to go to Michigan, or how did you make that choice?
No, Tim, it was by the grace of God that I went to Michigan, because I was actually headed to Cincinnati. Oscar Robertson had come to my high school and had lunch, and I really idolized him because he was really a complete player, and I had the pleasure of playing him one-on-one, and that was right after my senior year. And the year that I played him one-on-one was a year that he set the triple-double in the NBA, which was broken in 2017. He held it for that long. So during the recruiting period, I visited several colleges, and I visited Cincinnati, and I returned home, and I had 4 schools left, and I just sort of prayed about it. And I said, "Well, Lord, I'm not totally familiar with the process of recruiting, but I have looked at several institutions, and I think I got a pretty good idea where I would like to go and what I would like to study." And the small, still voice said, "Call Michigan." And I kind of thought, I said, "Call Michigan." Well, I hadn't heard from Michigan in about a month, because really they were the first to come and visit me during the recruiting time. Dave Strack came to my house. He was told by Jim Scala, "Listen, you need to go and visit with this kid in Chicago. We think he's going to be a good player." So they came to my house, and of course, my mother, being my mother, served them, wined and dined them real good. And I hadn't heard from them in a month. So when a small, still voice said, "Call Michigan," I did, what the voice told me to do, which was, I thought, the Holy Spirit. And Jim Scala picked up the phone, and I said, "Coach Scala," and he said, "Cazzie," he said, I said, "How you guys doing?" I said, "Can I reach Coach Dave Strack?" And I reached Dave. And he said he had gone down to it was still the old offices where they were. I think it was Ferry Field, the offices were there. And he said he went down to get some coffee, and I could hear him yelling, "Tell Dave Cazzie Russell is on the line." So I waited, and he said, "Coach Strack here," and I said, "Coach," said Cazzie Russell. He said, "Hey, Caz, how you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing great, but I'm a little disappointed that I haven't heard from you guys." And it got quiet on the other end of the line, and I wondered what he was going to say. And he said, "Well, we were told that you were no longer interested in Michigan." And I said, "Who told you that?" And as I look back over Tim, that was my first taste of bureaucracy, because they were told that I was not interested because there was some, money involved. So Michigan refused to pay the money. And I said, "Well, I would love to come and take a look at the university." And they told me about Bill Bunda, who had had a great sophomore year. And I said, "Well, I would like to come up and take a look." And a lot of people kept telling me, "Well, that's a football school. You don't need to go there." And I said, "Well, I'm going to be obedient. I'm going to be obedient, and I'm going to go," because I prayed about it. So when I got there, uh, Dave lost the keys to Yost Fieldhouse. That was what he told me. So, um, as I was told later on, that was the greatest move that he ever made in his life, because I guess Yost was not the most attractive, that people use the arenas nowadays to really sell it to the kids. This is where you're going to be playing. This is your locker. This is our film room. And of course, after having made several visits to Michigan since my days, I see how everything is improved. The locker room. I mean, everything is so super. So anyway, I spoke to Dave, and I said, "Well, I would love to fly up bring my mother and father up. So they flew us up, and I met Bill Bunton, and we had a good time. And I talked with the guys, and I talked with Dave, and talked to Jim Scaler, who was really very, I guess, comforting for me as a young kid trying to determine where he wanted to go to school, because I'd gotten very fortunate. I'd gotten so many offers. I really could have chose, UCLA. I could have gone to Cincinnati. Could have gone to, several schools. But I wanted to kind of stay in the Midwest because I played very physical in Chicago, and the Big Ten and Missouri Valley were, I thought, kind of the most physical that might fit my game in terms of running the floor, being physical, because I had grown from, I guess, 6'2" to 6'3.5" between my freshman year and sophomore year in high school, and then I went up to 6'4", and by the time I got to Michigan, I was 6'5", and I grew another half inch, while at Michigan. So I looked at the university, and they took me to the big house and had lunch, and I overlooked Ann Arbor, and I used to walk across those tracks, but now that's like a little town down there now, But so I made a decision, and when I came back in the fall and walked in and saw Yost, I almost fell down. Because at that time, it was, it was all dirt, and I understand there were quite a few places built like that for military reasons. So anyway, uh, they put a portable floor, which was a great floor. It made me feel like I could jump once I played on that floor. So that's how I ended up going to Michigan and my first year there. And it was really fascinating to be an African-American kid there in 1962 with some 28,000 people from all walks of life. And it was a great atmosphere. I stayed in the South Quad, stayed in the dorms, got to eat 3 meals a day. Sometimes I only ate 2, and what a great atmosphere. And we had one heck of a recruiting freshman class that year. So that's how I ended up going to Michigan. And of course, my career was really blessed. I couldn't play as a freshman, but I joined Bunton and Trugani and Bobby Cantrell, who was really my sidekick. If I was going in the alley to fight, I would take Bobby Cantrell with me. He was tough as nails. So that was a good experience. The class we had, Jim Myers, Oliver Darden, Clausen, Thompson, Van was there. Van Tilliston, I think is the name. And Dan Brown. So we had a pretty good class, and it was quite an atmosphere for me as a young African American leaving home for the first time.
Yeah. You played as a high school athlete one-on-one against Oscar Robertson. You got to tell us about that game. How did you do? Who won? What was it like?
Do I have to talk about it? Do I have to? I after when I made the visit, he was showing me around, and we stopped in the gym, and I played him one-on-one. I learned more basketball probably in 20 minutes than I had in a whole year. I mean, when I say that, I mean fundamentals, like the triple threat position, uh, how to use that off foot as a balancer, learning how to really shoot it at the apex, a good rotation on the ball. But the guy, Oscar, beat me up with his eyes. He never looked at you. He just, he could pass the ball off, obviously, without looking at it. And he was 1962. This guy was quick. He could go. And I said, well, I don't know. I might be able to beat him. And then he made a move. He faked right and went left along the baseline. And I thought, I was taught to step out of bounds to cut a guy off defensively. And he noticed that. So apparently this must not have been his first rodeo with somebody stepping like that. So he paused and acted as if he was going to come back out from the baseline. And then like it was a 2-second count, and then changed his mind and went to the basket and left me standing there. And I said, oh, I got to record that move. I got to work on that myself, Tim, because what a great move. going to the left. And just a great opportunity for me as a young man, because I downloaded that and I went home and I worked all summer, working those moves, going to the right, going to the left, using the inside leg to pivot. Because if you go in to make a left-hand lip, you got to go off the right leg so the right leg can set it up. And if you're going in for a right-hand layup, the left leg can set it up. So it would allow me to step away. And when I saw Dirk Nowitzki make that move, step away, I started thinking, is it easier for a right-handed person to do the step away going left, or is it easier going to the right? So I'm just saying that because this is what I thought about when I started making these moves, because the jumper now, Oscar told me the jumper sets it up.
Mm-hmm.
You can make that jumper, they got to respect that. And once they come up on you, then you have to determine if they're too close with an opportunity to block the shot. So it wasn't the big things, but it was the little things that I learned from him. And then I worked on them in the summer, and I had to be careful because I would laugh because I said to myself, nobody can stop me with these new moves. But I kind of kept it to myself. That's that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of feeling. And when I got away to college, I was watching a game between Creighton and Michigan, and Paul Silas came in the 2020 club, and I hate to say this, but Bill Bundy ate him alive. I mean, and then I said to myself, I think I can play at this level.
Yeah.
So at some point you got to convince yourself.
Right. Cazzie, you mentioned Dave Strack, your coach. You also talked about the great young players. Bill Button had his number retired like you, Oliver Darden. You shared a story with me about the first time that you went to dinner at Coach's house. How'd that?
You know what? I knew you were going to ask me about that. Yeah, of course, when you're freshman, I guess it's tradition where you go to the head coach's house for dinner, the recruiting class of all the guys that were freshmen. And we go there, and of course, Dave, being a former basketball player himself, almost as if he wanted to really pinch himself and see if he had done a good recruiting job. Could these guys shoot? And I laughed about that because I'm sure he already knew that. But anyway, we went out in the driveway. We had this serious game of horse going on. And Dave ended up beating us all. And so when his wife, Mrs. Strack, said, Dave, dinner is being served. And so we all started into the house, and I tapped Dave on the shoulder and I said, hey, coach, you can't tell anybody you beat us, because that's going to look bad for your recruiting resume if you beat us. And so he laughed, and it was at that point that he kind of put his arm around my shoulder, and I really felt like he was really in my corner in terms of telling me that, as he had told my mother, we really like Cazzie. We want him to come to Michigan. We're going to take care of him. We're not just going to throw him in the corner. We're going to make sure he goes to class, make sure he conducts himself. And boy, this was right down my dad's line, because he liked that discipline stuff.
Yeah. I
Because
have to tell you, Cazzie, if I beat you in horse around the world, I'm telling everybody.
I know you are, Tim. There's no question about it.
So I was talking to one of your teammates, George Palmy, and you're 6'5", 220, and he said the thing that separated you was your toughness, but also you were so well conditioned. Back then, take us through how do you get in shape to play elite basketball back in the 1960s?
Well, you remember, Tim, I mentioned to you after watching that game where Michigan beat Creighton, and my love for the game had grown tremendous since my high school days, and the fact that schools really humbled me in terms of inviting me to go to college. But I said to myself after we Unfortunately, we won the city, won the public, and lost the state championship by 1 point. I said to myself, you will never beat me and say that I was out of shape. I knew that conditioning was very vital in terms of running the floor conditioning. So what I did was, when I got to Michigan, I used to run the steps at Ferry Field. And then I used to put on combat boots and I would run the Michigan golf course up the number 10 fairway at that time, and then up number 11, which was a hill.
Wow.
And then I used to very, very easily, quietly run down the hill at 11 and then try to run a couple of sprints along the 10th fairway. And then I did that for about 30 minutes, and then I would jump rope with the boots, and then I'd take them off. And I started doing that maybe every other day, conditioning myself. And then we had to run the mile as a team under 6:15 at that time.
Wow, that's impressive.
And I started, and at that time I felt like from high school to be an influence to my teammates, to just kind of set the standard, to kind of try to encourage everybody to get themselves in shape, because only you know what kind of shape you're in as an individual. So I started preparing for the run. And when we got ready to make the run at Ferry Field, of course I had on gym shoes at that time. And I ran the mile my sophomore year in 5:29. And I ran it my junior year 5:19, and in my senior year 5:09. Now it didn't seem like much to people, but for me to run that kind of race, keep myself in shape, watch what I ate. And at that time, I loved milk. So I'd have milk with just about everything. And I just said to myself, if you can play at this level, don't ever lose a game where you are not in shape. Because I watched several guys really struggle getting up and down the floor. So I just made that vow to myself that I was going to be trouble on both ends of the floor, conditioning wise. And of course, I kept telling myself how great the floor was at Yost Fieldhouse. It kind of made it feel like it would make me jump higher. But somebody said I was suffering delusions of grandeur at that time. But it wasn't the floor, but I'd gotten that information from a real good friend of mine, Tommy Hawkins, who went to Notre Dame, and we lived in the same neighborhood. And he used to run the railroad tracks with combat boots. And I said, "What's up with the boots?" He said, "Kaz, it's the greatest thing that I've ever done." He said, "I run in combat boots, and then I jump rope. And then I shoot around for about 10 or 15 minutes. It makes me feel like I can climb the sky. It makes me feel like I can sky." And of course, then I started thinking that some of your great jumpers were not really good jump shot shooters, even though the ball had to be shot at the apex. But the jumping wasn't the problem, because you could pick your spots. If I had to jump over a guard, or if I had to jump over a big guy, I would challenge him one way or the other. But the conditioning was, I would say, my trademark in terms of being competitive and playing at the next level. And then I would, of course, work on spending sometime 15, 20 minutes by myself, shooting bank shots and jumpers, and kind of narrating to myself, Michigan has the ball with so many seconds to go, and what kind of shot that I learned from Oscar, to know where your strength was. Every ball player needs to have a pet peeve move or know where his strength was. And my strength really was from the foul line in. That was sort of like my 3-point circle, because the 3-point shot obviously wasn't there when I was in college, but I imagined the foul line around the basketball court was my 3-point, and I just felt like anything uh, inside the foul line or at the foul line or jumpers around that side, I should miss. So you talk to yourself, and again, conditioning was a big factor. And when I saw that as a freshman, where guys had a tough time guarding me, and then I would kind of turn that around on the defense and try to overplay and not let a guy catch the ball. So, and a lot of people, when I tell people that, say, you were ahead of your time. And I says, no. As I kind of analyze the game, that's what I thought Cazzie Russell needed to do to be able to make the team and of course, be a good ball player. And as it turned out, I got blessed. The Lord just blessed me, and I grew to 6'5.5", and I played with some pretty good ball players who made sure I got the ball at certain times. And I, in turn, tried to take advantage of the fact that they started double teaming me. I could find my teammate when they were open.
I'm completely impressed. 6'5", 220. You could run up and down hills with combat boots. You have a mile time that could probably put you on the cross country team. I'm just curious, did Bump Elliott, the football coach, ever invite you or encourage you to play tight end or defensive end? I would have certainly asked that question if I was Bump Elliott.
Well, I think it was a Fritz Chrysler that was around, I think, when I was in school. I think it was Fritz Chrysler. He didn't just ask me, but he asked Bunton and Darden, you know. And
He was desperate.
yeah, he was. And I mean, we all went out there one day, and I guess Dave got word and said to me, "That's the quickest way you can get sent home, man, messing around that football field." So he wasn't really big. I mean, we were at the time when I enrolled in Michigan. At the time I got in school, I was 6'5.5", and I weighed about 215, and I feel like uh, I had naturally improved in terms of body, because the body develops as you become a young man. And the fact that I was 6'5.5", and I felt at that time there wasn't a whole lot of big guards at that time. And boy, I tell you, that was quite an experience, realizing that I could have an impact because Strack would run me down low.
Mm-hmm.
And then Billy and I would play a high-low. And then my roommate, Oliver Don, could jump out of the gym. So, I mean, I looked at our ball club, the front line, and I said, man, and we started calling it Bloody Nose Lane, because if you came up in there, man, we tried to punish you. Now, we played tough, played hard, but with Bunton, Darden, and myself on the front line, and then I played next to Bobby Cantrell, so Dave had me playing guard. So it was, I tell you, man, it was a real blessing, Tim, that I was obedient to that call that said, call Michigan, because the rest is history.
Yeah.
You know,
I know you played at Yost for 3 years.
yes.
But a funny story, when I was probably 5 years old, my dad showed me a picture and he said, "This is Cazzie Russell. It's the picture where you were in Chrysler Arena holding two basketballs out in your varsity jacket." And I told my dad, I'm impressed with Cazzie Russell because he's a great basketball player, but he also is good at construction. He's helping to build Chrysler Arena. What do you remember about that iconic picture? How did that come across?
I remember that, Tim, like it was yesterday. I was down at Yost shooting around, and I'm not quite sure if we had the day off or if we had to come down there for something, but Wayne DeNeff, who was writing for the Ann Arbor News at that time, I either spoke to Dave and said, listen, I need Cazzie for about a half an hour to 40 minutes to take some pictures over at the Chrysler Arena that they were building. I had on my favorite hat, and I had on my M jacket, man, and I go with Wayne DeNeff over there, and he thought about taking the picture with the couple of basketballs, and I have seen that picture, and my mind races back there where I said, people can say what they want to say, but I just know the Lord had his hands on me going to Michigan, because when I stood in that construction site looking up, and the guys up there were yelling, "Hey, guys!" And I was holding one ball in each hand, one in each hand, and I had on my jacket, and I was looking up there, and I said, "Oh my God, am I going to get a chance to play my senior year in the new arena. And I remember, and Wayne didn't have to act like he was like, he acted as if I was his son, man, holding those two basketballs. He was a good guy. I really liked Wayne. Wayne was cool. And there I was. But unfortunately, there was a construction accident where the crane fell down and I didn't get a chance to play my senior year, but I did return my first year in the pros where the Knicks played Detroit in an exhibition game. And the fans there were wonderful, man. I got a standing ovation for about 2, 3, 4 minutes. And that kind of irritated some of the pros because, they didn't like all this fanfare given to the rookies, and I learned that you had to go through your baptism as a rookie, but what a great feeling it was to return, and never got a chance to play in the arena. And I spoke to Wayne DeNeff about that picture, and he said everybody loved it. He said everybody went berserk about that picture, and I truly am sorry that you never got a chance to play in it.
Yeah. Name, image, likeness is a hot topic
Oh,
in
Lord.
college basketball. It's dramatically changed the way recruiting and
Mhm.
transfers and everything. Are you in favor of NIL, or do you like the way it used to be? And can you imagine how much money you would make if you played today?
Tim, a good friend of mine called me the other day, and he says, "Have you heard of this NIL?" And I told him, "I don't want to talk about it." And the reason is, I don't even think we could get $15 a month. They wouldn't even allow for laundry or $15, $25. So I don't know if I'm in the right spirit to really talk about that because, I mean, the stories that I hear, Tim, I mean, kids getting 4 to 5 million. I think the athletes should get something, but I don't know about. Uh, well, I mean, who am I? What do I know? I mean, all I know is that some of these guys are making, I mean, big bucks. One guy told me, he said, "Hey, listen, Kaz, I'm not going in the pros because I'm making more in college than I am now." So again, I'm a little disappointed that they didn't give us a little something because let me tell you a quick story, Tim. I got a call about 10 games into my sophomore year. And I still think it might have been the big boys. And they said, "We'll give you 2,000." And you were averaging, I think it was, I think 20, I'm not sure, 24/7 as a sophomore. Said if you just scored 20 in the next 4 or 5 games, and it shook me. Because the voice was is the word I want to use, contorted, like or sorry, I really like the guy had something in his mouth and he said, we know what you can do. We'll take care of you. We'll give you, and of course at that time we were not getting anything in college
Mhm.
money wise. I mean, we had a scholarship. I was grateful for that because my dad worked in the steel mill, and I knew this was a blessing to get a scholarship to go away to college. But anyway, this call comes in and I was shaken. So I go down to the office and I sit in the office and I told Dave about it and they reported it and they tapped my phone for a while.
Wow.
And they told me I couldn't talk about it at that time. But it really shook me, Tim, because there had been several reports on scandal in basketball. There have been a couple of big scandals that I'd known some of the guys from Chicago. And of course, we understand the big one with Roger Brown. And that frightened me. And so much so that I went down and I told Dave, and Jim Scaler came in and said, I think George was out of town. But I spoke to Dave and I said, what do I do? I heard this voice. And it's almost like at the end, the guy gave me kind of an ultimatum that, if you say you're going to do it and you don't do it, and I'd heard about different stories. So I sat down and I just, I kind of lost it a little bit because it kind of shook me that people would venture. Here I am, a kid having a great time in college and just playing competitive and enjoying, you know, living in the South Quad and walking down to the field house and playing basketball and staying in the M room. Of course, the M room doesn't look anything like it was when I was playing, um, but this shook me. And as a matter of fact, I had a tough day that day, and Dave and Jim told me to take it easy in practice. I didn't want it to be visibly noticeable, but it did shake me a little bit. And of course they reported, and then I talked to uh, Don Canham, who was just a great mind comforting guy that I could consult with and talk to him about running. And I started trying to dress like Don Canham. He had to look like he had the cashmere overcoat and the brown blazer, and I said, I'm gonna start saving my money now so I can start dressing like you. And he would laugh about it because he was a sharp dresser. So, and he was a really college kind of guy. So,
Cazzie, you're in your 80s now. You're sharp as can be. Playground legend, playing on asphalt for all those years in Chicago. How's your body holding up after the pounding you gave it?
well, I only played outdoors a lot my junior, a lot my senior year, and it's really funny because after I came back from playing Oscar Robertson 101, I took all my guys as a senior, and we started going to the different areas playing pickup ball, man. And the word got out, and I mean, you couldn't get a place in some of the parks that we played in, which was really good. So after that, I sort of backed away from playing outdoors. So most of my playing then was inside. If I played any games, and of course, the Intramural building had boogoos of basketball courts over there where I could always go over there and practice. But I tried to curtail any playing outdoors. But right now, at 81, my body has really gone through a lot. After I finished playing, and say I had my first hip replacement in 2000, where there was bone against bone. Then I've had both hips, I've had both knees, and I asked, was there any other recourse? And they says, no. That once you get bone against bone, there's nothing you can do about it. They give you a shot and you feel like you've died and gone to heaven for about 4 weeks, but then you start yelling for the doctor right away. So I've had both hips done, both knees done. The most recent revised hip was done last October. So I'm sort of gingerly recovering. They seem to be very concerned about my balance because it seems like now that as a senior, they said that I had lost my glute muscles. And I said, if somebody had told me after all this conditioning and running that I've done that I would lose my glute muscles, I would tell them you were nuts. But from the different surgeries, the number of surgeries, I'm really fighting to keep these glute muscles, which um, controls my balance somewhat. And I have to be very careful because I fell one day, I tripped one day at the golf course, and I said to the guys after they helped me up, I told them, hell, I don't remember it being this far down, So,
Cazzie, I was thinking about this. Together, we have 5 hip replacements and 3 knee surgery replacements. And maybe what we can do to say thank you is we'll give you a 20% off coupon on your next hip replacement or your next knee. So I'm curious. You'd mentioned earlier about the pride you felt being a Michigan athlete. The
yes.
1960s was chaotic and it was
Yeah.
divisive, a real period of social change. Can you elaborate on what it was like to be there at that time?
Yeah, that's kind of strange because as I look back over it, 62 to 66, that was a very trying time. And I say that uh, very humbly because, of course, after I graduated from Michigan, I was playing in the pros in 68. And just this year, I think it was last year, where uh, Townsend and Brunson each scored 30. in the playoffs, and there was a promo that flashed on the board that said the first two guys to do that was Cazzie Russell and Dick Barnett. And so I look back and when they flashed that in 1968, I thought about, boy, that was a rough year. That was a year that the guys objected to. They raised their fists at the Olympics. The track guys. I think RFK was assassinated. It was a tough time, but from 62 to 66, it was a trying time because for me, as a black kid coming out of Chicago to a predominantly all black high school, but having the privilege to go to a great institution. And I always say when people get confused, I said, don't get confused because we are the Harvard of the Midwest. And they just give me a hard time about that. But during that time, Tim, it actually was a very trying time. That's why I think I just feel really blessed. You know, God has really blessed me because the guys that I went to school with were awesome guys, you know, educated, and I had a chance, of course, to meet their families. And at that time when it could have gone either direction, but I was really blessed to be able to play with some super guys. I remember Tom Coles and John Harris started off, and I met Jim Tidwell and MC Burden. And of course, MC Burden gives me a hard time about breaking all of his records. He said, hell, you could have left me one, you know, and we laugh about that. But those were some bright spots to talk to. Of course, Tidwell was studying, I think, to be a doctor and either a lawyer, and then MC Burden was studying to be a doctor. So those were some of the highlights. And then, of course, my guys that I played with, and I just got a big kick out of Oosterbaan and Tom Cole and John Harris. And John Harris says, well, since you're a nice guy, I'll let you wear 33. So those were some bright spots. But 62 to 66, it was trying times. But thank God my guys at Michigan were pretty knowledgeable. I think we understood some of the winds of adversity that could very easily affect your team, but there was never. I don't recall ever a black and white situation coming up, and I'm very thankful to God because Dave and Jim and Tom Jorgensen, they seemed to be the right kind of guys for us during that time. I think Jim Scala and Tom Jorgensen were from Chicago, so they were really guys who really pushed Dave to come after me. So, I mean, you look at some times it wasn't all peaches and cream, but for the most part, I had a blessed time at Michigan, and I'm glad that the Lord led me to Michigan, you know, and I'm glad that I was able to kind of turn the program around, give us some notoriety to be a part of winning the Big Ten 3 straight years. I feel bad that we couldn't play as a freshman, so it might have been 4 years in a row. Who knows? But but yeah, 62 to 66 were trying times. I had a little run in a couple of times with some professors, but not enough to cause an upheaval. Just to kind of talk it out. And I think by studying the word, I was always able to kind of pray about it and see which should I take the high side on this, you know. But it was a great time in Michigan. It was really a good time for me for growing up as a young man.
Cazzie Russell, you played 13 years in the NBA. Do you have a funny story about what it was like to play back then? Maybe something about who you played against, some inspiration. Then you won an NBA championship. That must have been thrilling.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that every kid that plays ball has dreams of playing in the NBA, and I feel really blessed to have been the number 1 pick in '66. And the funny story, I call Dave Bean from time to time. As a matter of fact, I preached for a church in Detroit, not far from him, and he and several of the guys came to hear me preach. And so I would laugh with him because he was mayor. He was mayor of Detroit for a while. Dave Beam was. So I would call him and I would kid with him, and I would say, Dave, did you hear what the number one pick got the other day? And I said, what do you? He says, Caz, I don't want to talk about it. He said, because we came out 1-2 in 1966. So maybe the money that kids were getting 6, 7, 8 years down the line, or maybe 10 years down the line, we kind of felt like we should have been number one and number two during that time. That was a funny story because I used to call him and he didn't want to talk about it. That was one of my NBA stories. But funny story, my first year in the league, I got a chance to start, and it was against Elgin Baylor. So Dick Barnett, who later is Dr. Barnett, funny story about that kid. He was my roommate on the road for 5 years and said he wouldn't go 25 steps to class. But he later, when he was in the NBA, he drove 25 miles one way and 25 miles back to get his bachelor. And then when he got traded to New York, he would take the subway to NYU to get his master's. And then he eventually got his doctorate. So he was pretty sharp. And he would always, years after we retired, he would send me information telling me that it was for my perusal. And I said, well, you didn't use those words when we were playing ball, so we laughed about that. But a funny story, Tim, is playing against Elgin Baylor, and I was all hyped up. I had been playing really well. Elgin and I were about the same size, and he had a habit of sticking his hands sort of like in your rib cage on the side, kind of your hip, to push you around defensively. So anyway, Big Barnett told me, say, Rumi, listen, he says, when you guard Elgin Baylor, said when he catches the ball, he's going to twist his neck like he's really having a problem. He said, don't go for that. He said, because the minute you look at him and you feel sorry, he's going to blow by you. So he says, you understand? I said, yeah. And he would kind of imitate what Baylor would do. He was always taking that one foot, putting it behind each other like a triple threat position, but he would be twisting his neck, like he was in pain. And so Barnett told me, he said, we were warming up before the game. He said, Caz, you got me now. I said, don't get caught up in that. I said, I got you. I understand. So the game started. Second play of the game, they run me off of screen, and I'm, as we call it, nose to number. I'm chasing Baylor, and he runs off the screen, and I'm running right behind him, and he catches the ball, Tim, and he turns and he faces me, and it's almost like the guy the guy was in pain. And the moment I looked at that, he blew by me, and just what happened, Willis stepped up and saved me, and the ball went out of bounds, and I went, and Barnett said, he almost like explained to me, what did I tell you? Didn't I tell you that's what he was going to do? And so it was like little stories like that, but you'd have to kind of see the picture of it to really get the full blast of what I'm saying, because I didn't follow instructions, but from there on in, I didn't go for that. I didn't even look at the guy. I just played him tough, and I didn't care if his neck was falling off, because I understand that's what he did to everybody.
Final thing, home stretch here. Fast break on the basketball court is quick. So is the fast break questions. I've got a few questions, and it's just a 1-word, maybe a 2-word answer. So quick. What did you study at Michigan?
Education.
What was your hardest class that you ever took?
Kinesiology.
Who is the biggest rival, the biggest game on your schedule?
Southwestern.
What was the most points you ever scored in a game at any level?
48.
Who was that against?
Last game of my career against Northwestern, I believe.
What was your favorite pregame meal?
Pasta. I got away from beef.
Okay. Who is your closest Michigan friend in history?
I had a couple of guys, but I would say Bill Button.
All right. Do you have a favorite all-time NBA player? Who is it?
I mean, I have a lot of favorite players. I mean, different eras. I admired Bill Russell for revolutionizing the game. When he blocked a shot, Tim, he never knocked it out of bounds. And that's amazing. And of course, I've had the pleasure of, down through the years, of playing golf with Sam Jones, who recently passed away. And I used to talk to him about playing with Bill Russell. But people ask me all the time about basketball players, and I say, you don't want to get into that. Yeah, I mean, if you started Mount Rushmore, they voted on the top 30 players in Chicago, and they put me number one on Mount Rushmore. I mean, I was just almost in tears. And they retired my jersey in Chicago, and I saw this Mount Rushmore. And then they did an article, and people said, you folks probably think Cazzie Russell is a mythical figure because the records that he set in 61 and 62, many of you weren't even born. You didn't even know about Cazzie Russell. So they did this article, and there I was on Mount Rushmore. But if you had to start a Mount Rushmore in the NBA, you would never finish it because, Tim, you're going to leave somebody out that should be there. Yeah. And so how do you judge greatness? Do you judge it, like I said, on productivity? I mean, because you look at Joe DiMaggio as one of the greatest hitters at the time, 56 straight games. Has anyone ever broken that? Or you look at Bill Russell, who won 10 out of 12 championships of the years he played. You look at, of course, you can't go through basketball and not mention Oscar Robertson or Jerry West or Michael Jordan, LeBron James. I mean, you look at Steph Curry, who I think is one of the greatest shooters that ever shot the ball. What an honor it is to represent the NBA and the Olympics and shoot the ball the way he does. Who was told he was too small in 2009. So a lot of great players. I would love to just sit down and have somebody just have the audacity to even talk to me about guys being the greatest. Because, Tim, if you look at it, look at the different era where guys passed the baton.
Yeah.
To keep the game alive and great as it is now. And I think it would be unfair to try to judge Kareem with Bill Russell or somebody with Wilt. I mean, here's a guy that scored 100 points in a game. And the night he did, he was 28 for 32 from the foul line. And, of course, one of my former coaches when I got traded to the Warriors was Al Addles. And I asked him what it was like playing with Chamberlain, And he and Wilt were very, very close. And he was really blown out when Wilt passed away. But, yeah, anytime you have about an hour over some coffee and a roll to talk about the great players of the NBA, and you don't have any meetings to go to, listen, man, you can talk.
I love it, Cazzie. Thank you so much. You took us to school. You are a legend. I'm so glad that you are my friend. And you know what? Next time you're in Ann Arbor, I'm going to buy you a cup of coffee, and we're going to go over that list. Thank you very much, Cazzie.
God bless you. Thank you guys for remembering me. Thank you.
Next Tuesday, Michigan plays against Wake Forest in a rematch from last year in Winston-Salem. This is a good opportunity to prepare for March. That's right. Get used to going into a big NBA arena, different kind of setting. There'll be a lot of Michigan fans there, but it's not going to sell like a game in Chrysler Arena. Also, remember that last year when these teams play, Wake Forest had some star power. They had a better team, and they beat Michigan in a close contest. This Michigan team, way better than last year. I expect Michigan to play really well and win this game. Wake Forest is preseason 11th in the ACC. Once again, they don't have the star power that Michigan does, and so I'm expecting a Michigan victory. And I will break it down for you in next week's podcast. The Go Blue Hoops podcast will also have a fantastic interview with the shooting GOAT, Glenn Rice, the best shooter in Michigan history, the guy that led Michigan to its only national championship. So episode 1 is done. And I had a ball. It was great talking to the unbelievably charismatic icon, Cazzie Russell, breaking down Michigan. They're 1-0 after knocking off Oakland. And we want you to like, share, and subscribe to the Go Blue Hoops podcast. You can find us at Hale Media Group. It's going to get better and better, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is Tim McCormick.
If you like this kind of content, please like, share, follow, and subscribe. And as always, go blue.